get into some Georgia football. Hogs will take on Georgia again this year. That's 2 years in a row. Patrick Garbin has been covering Georgia football for a long time. He has written 11 books, as his 12th coming out, about Georgia football. 10 of those books, actually, about Georgia football. And you're going back years and years of research here as well. So Patrick, I think it sounds like one of the foremost experts on Georgia Bulldog football. Patrick, appreciate your time today. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on and appreciate the kind words.
Well, and also covering Georgia 24/7 sports. So, I mean, the expectations are always there for Georgia. I don't think that any year is any different than other as far as having high expectations. But would it be accurate? Let's put this in a yes or no. And you always have to have Alabama in the question too. But let me just put it in these terms. No team in the SEC, Patrick, goes into the season with higher expectations than Georgia, yes or no?
I think yes. And I'll explain a little bit. I think especially since, although Georgia's done well, beginning with the 17 season and the Rose Bowl win and then the loss in the national title game, there's a lot of Georgia fans that think that although 18, 19, and 20 was a trio of great seasons, they didn't quite meet expectations. I mean, there was no playoff appearance in those 3 years, and to some Georgia fans, they can't believe they didn't even win the East last year. Lose to Florida and then Alabama previously. So I think this year is. Since I've been around following Georgia football since I was a kid in the early to mid '80s, I don't remember another season like this heading in where there was so much expectations placed on the team.
Yeah, it always does seem that this is finally the year for Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. And if it doesn't happen this year, are there going to start being talks, mumbles about what really is different from the Kirby Smart era than what you had with Mark Rich the whole time?
Yeah, and to be quite honest, there already has been some rumblings. I mean, people love to put up the Kirby Smart era, his first 5 years compared to, say, Coach Rick's from 01 through 05, and I think the records are about identical. Mm-hmm. The thing is, and I covered when Coach Rick was here too. I think the records might be similar, but as far as the talent that's coming in, and although, Coach Rick, he certainly recruited well, top 10 classes every year with Smart, it's been top 3 every year. Mm. But with that comes the high expectations of, what have you, you need to win a title at some point, is some people's point of view, some Georgia fans. So,
well, so is JT Daniels the missing piece? I mean, it seemed that he was last year when he comes in second half of the season. Offense looks like it starts to click a little bit more, and there were thoughts that maybe if Daniels was healthy last year, then they would have been an East Division champion. Is JT Daniels the missing piece for this Georgia team?
He is certainly, perhaps as far as a pure passing quarterback, decision maker, he's one of the best I've seen, certainly around Georgia. Now, last year, I'll tell you one thing with Coach Smart. I think it was his first 62 games at Georgia. They only had 6 300 passing games, whereas last year with JT, the 4 games he started, they had 2, and then one of the 2 they didn't. He threw for 299. So with JT, it's a totally different offense than say when Stetson Bennett or DeJuan Mathis was quarterback last year. And I think just what you saw against Mississippi State, South Carolina, Missouri, and then Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl, and knowing the surrounding cast he has, JT Daniels could be that missing piece. But I will say a lot of it does have to do with that surrounding talent. He's finally, he's had a full off season where he was healthy, and also with Todd Monken being his second year as offensive coordinator, I think that's going to be a huge help. So there's a lot of excitement around JT, but there's a lot of expectations too.
There certainly is a lot of excitement and expectations, like you said, around the Georgia offense. Georgia defense, though, has been pretty steady under Kirby Smart. Is that going to continue for the 2021 season?
Yeah, in fact, that opener against Clemson, you may see the best front sevens in college football, number 1 and 2, and you can rank them because it arguably could go either way. Mm-hmm. Starting off now, the one thing about Georgia is that their secondary it's a bit suspect. I mean, this is a pass defense that, as far as efficiency, last year they were basically middle of the road after Kirby Smart's against his teams previously were always excellent. In fact, top 10, at least top 20 or so, but never as low as 50-something as they ranked. That unit lost 6 defensive backs, and now they brought in Tyke Smith, who was a standout at West Virginia, and Darion Kendrick, who was all-conference 2 years at Clemson to kind of help that out. But, there's the idea that the secondary hasn't been, may take some time to gel and whatnot. That's the one little question mark. If you did have one of the defense, how is this pass defense going to be? That wasn't great last year. Ask Florida and Alabama. They were able to throw all over Georgia a year ago. And then you lose a lot of guys. A lot of those guys going into the NFL, actually. So front seven, maybe the best in college football, but secondary against the pass, it's going to be something to watch and perhaps a concern this year.
Well, as far as the line of scrimmage is concerned, they're going to be good on both sides of the ball. You know that. And if there's so much talk about JT Daniels, look, he's already quoted today during his media avail that he's okay having the ball in his hands, but he looks at his role as a distributor. So who's he throwing to? I know the running back room is really strong. You've got Zamir White coming back. You got James Cook coming back, a bunch of really good incoming recruits. I think maybe, I'm talking about missing pieces here, Eric Gilbert, the transfer out of LSU. I thought he was going to be a tight end. It looks like Georgia might be moving him to receiver. Is he the missing piece then?
You know what? And I covered Eric when he was in high school, and he was unbelievable then, and he certainly has the potential. But kind of to your point, they're just, at receivers, Kyrus Jackson, he actually led the team in receiving last year. He returned. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Jermaine Burton, Darnell Washington, tight end, Arian Smith, maybe the fastest of the group. Dominic Blaylock is another receiver who had an excellent freshman year and then missed last year because of injury. They are absolutely loaded, as JT said today. The thing is, there's only one ball, and with this offense, it's almost like you need multiple balls to get the football to these different players. On running back, they from Zamir White, James Cook, Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, and Dejon Edwards. All those guys rushed for at least anywhere between about 200 and 800 yards last year. They all returned. It's offensively, at least on paper, they should be pretty lethal and loaded.
Patrick, somebody who's probably not very well liked in the state of Georgia, Dan Mullen, the head coach of Florida, during his media availability yesterday, talked about getting rid of the permanent SEC division crossovers. Now, obviously, Georgia has a pretty tough one and the oldest rivalry in the South with Auburn. Do you think that Georgia fans and most people would around the SEC be for that, so that there is mixed up, or especially for Georgia, do they want to see that Auburn rivalry continue for many, many years to come?
I think here's what's funny. So in Athens, when the Auburn game got moved around. I mean, it used to always be about in like mid-November for decades. And I think this year it's I think October 9th, and it was in October or late September last year. Even when that game got moved around, the traditionalists, and I tend to be one, and there are a lot of them that follow Georgia football, that upset them.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that game got moved around. So I really think for most Georgia fans, if you were to take Auburn away, that might be. I think a lot of Georgia fans would say, "Hey, you can have Tech, take Georgia Tech, but don't take Auburn."
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a reason why it's Deep South's oldest football rivalry, and that would sting a little bit, I think, for most Georgia fans.
So you say you would get rid of old-fashioned hate, good old-fashioned hate, rather than Georgia versus Auburn. I mean, why would you want to get rid of Georgia Tech? It might be an automatic win every year now.
Well, no. That's me. I'd have to actually think about it. Me covering the team as a quote neutral journalist, I'd probably tend to say maybe get rid of maybe a division, an FCS school. I tend to like the Georgia Tech rivalry. However, it's that opinion is becoming more and more so. I think a lot of Georgia fans are basically think, what is there to gain by beating Georgia Tech? And if you lose, which Georgia did in 14, 16, and 08, there's it's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad offseason with Georgia loses to Georgia Tech. But yet, if you win, which you're expected to, a lot of Georgia contingent feel that there's not a whole lot to gain. But I will say down here in Athens, the Atlanta area for Georgia, that is a big issue that comes up. A lot of people think that hey, if you're going to drop a game, it should be Tech, if anybody.
Yeah, it's kind of the same boat that your first opponent of the season, Clemson, is in with South Carolina. What do you really gain from beating them? And like you said, you have everything to lose if you lose to South Carolina for Clemson. But you'll see the Clemson Tigers, Dabo Swinney, week 1. What are your impressions of Clemson and how they'll replace a guy like Trevor Lawrence with, and I hope I say this last name right, DJ Ugualalele, I think is my best attempt at it.
We'll get him plenty of practice.
That sounds good to me.
What is your first impression of Clemson, and how do you think Georgia will match up?
Like I said, I mean, they could very well have the best front seven in college football. I think their offensive line is, could be a little suspect, especially going against Georgia's front seven. But I'll just call him DJ, right? I won't even try to attempt the last name. But I think DJ's from what I've seen, he's going to be a good test for if he can have time and he can throw in the pocket and move around. And that's Georgia. That's one thing I like to point out. I really think Georgia this year is going to blitz a lot more than they have. Especially because of the inexperienced secondary, they're going to push the envelope, so to speak, more on defense. That's going to be a real good test for DJ. And Clemson, this is a big game for Georgia. I know Kirby basically just said a little earlier that, hey, it's, and JT, I think, said it as well. It's an opening game, whether it's Clemson or anybody. But, Georgia hasn't beaten a top 10 team to start a season since 1965. And they've gone 0-3-1 in the process. So a win over Clemson, it would set the, Kirby Smart can say all he wants about whether it would set the tone or not, but it certainly would set the tone. And, I think, I'll be honest, I see that Clemson's about a 3.5, 4 point favorite, which I'm surprised at. I would think it'd be more along the lines of a pick 'em. I think Georgia has a good chance. Like I said, I think this season could be a really special season, and that means even being maybe a touch more talented and maybe better prepared than a team as good as Clemson come September 4th.
Patrick, we got to run. Appreciate your time, man. Thanks for your expertise, and maybe once it's coming time for Arkansas, Georgia, we can get into this again.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Patrick.
Patrick Garbin from 24/7 Sports, covering Georgia football. And he goes all the way back into the 60s with some of that stuff. You can appreciate it. Less than a month until school starts. Still time to get out there in a brand new RV from Wheels RV in Springdale. They've got all the best brands at the best prices. Finding Grand Design, Forest River, KZ, Heartland, Keystone, Alliance. And you get peace of mind with a lifetime warranty on every new RV purchase. Plus, the mobile service shuttle always available to keep you camping. Come on and discover why Wheels has been voted best RV dealership in Northwest Arkansas. They're 5 miles west off I-49. It's exit 72. Seek, explore, discover Wheels RV. You're wrapping up the first hour next.